morning. Good to be here this morning. I'll be talking on a topic which may surprise some of you. It's about loneliness, which is a cancer of the mind. To set the scene, I'll tell you a real story, which is quite familiar to me. A couple of weeks back, there was this young lady who was very distraught and anxious, walked into my clinic with a teenage son. He came and sat in my clinic room. His shoulders were drooped. He was not making eye contact. He was down in his spirits. And he has very poor low self-confidence and self-esteem, and he was depressed. She came to me because she wanted to take a second opinion, because she's been to various doctors and therapists, and she's confused. This gentleman was a bubbly teenager, well-liked by his colleagues before the COVID. He used to play football. And because of COVID, he couldn't take the social isolation. He went downhill, he dropped his grades, and he was not able to work well. He got addicted to the screen, and his eating habits changed. The mother and father, they were going through busy lives. They feel guilty that they could have given more time. But here we are. But why did I tell you this story? It is so real. It is so familiar to us. But she also said something very important. Doctor, I never thought loneliness is a challenge for older adults, not for young people. Why should my son be lonely? He's got a lot of Instagram followers, Facebook followers, a lot of friends. How can he be lonely? And I never knew loneliness can be so devastating on one's health. And she also added this passing comment which disturbed me. You know, doctor, people are very insensitive about loneliness. And sometimes they treat you with utter disdain. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the reason of the talk, loneliness, cancer of the mind. Why cancer? Because it disrupts, destroys your physical health, your mental health, your social health, and psychological health. I'm sure we all would have had a transient feeling of loneliness. Yes? No? It's central to human life. Why? Why do you feel lonely? Because every heart longs to belong. We have an innate proclivity and desire to connect to people. Look at the slide. Man is a social being. He cannot be an island to himself. But when man was a hunter-gatherer, he had to work in groups. That gave him security, confidence. But sometimes he has to peel off from the group. So the biological system put in some mechanisms to protect him, to make sure that he's got a sharp reflexes, he's vigilant, he's looking out for danger, and he reacts quickly. And that's what we call it as, we'll call it for a simple term, biological alarm box system. Or we call it a hypothalamic pituitary axis adrenal system. I don't want to use a posh word for you, a simple biological alarm clock. So it reminds you that I'm feeling lonely. I'm not feeling warm. I need to get back to my family. That is what causes loneliness. You need to differentiate between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is a welcome aloneness that we want when we want to reflect, dwell, mull, ponder, wonder, or connect with the transcendence, pray, meditate, find a purpose and meaning in life. For some people, it could be just going out for a walk, spending time with the family, or taking a dog out for a walk, or just listening to poetry. But what is loneliness? Loneliness is a discomfort that you feel as a result of a gap in one's perception of social contact and the actual experience of it. What do I mean by that? I want more of social contact, but I'm not getting it. And it is this mismatch that causes loneliness. So, what happens to people when they go through loneliness? You need to hear this out to understand. When people go through loneliness, the first thing that happens is emotional distress. It's a gnawing feeling that I don't belong, the pain, the heartbreak that they go through. And the next stage is social isolation. They feel, I'm not wanted, I'm not valued and valuable. And then there is interpersonal isolation, where they feel that I'm not good enough to be loved and I can't love others. And the fourth stage is a stage of self-alienation. When you come to self-alienation, you go into what do you call it, as a self-preservatory mode. Let us not forget the forest, looking at the trees. How is the big picture looking? Pretty grim. This is a report by US Surgeon General. It's about pandemic, it's 2023. He's talking about the epidemic that is looming large in America and all across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we are walking into a mental health time bomb. What's the difference between COVID pandemic and loneliness pandemic? In COVID pandemic, there was a panic in the pandemic. That's what brought all of us together. That's what helped us to garner all the energy support. It is unprecedented. We got a vaccine in 12 months. That's what we could do. But loneliness was spoken about, talked about during the pandemic. So, what are the statistics? This is a statistic which shows that India ranks third. Now, this is statistics, a survey done before the COVID, which shows that loneliness, prevention of loneliness is all across the world. And the Scandinavian countries have done better. Now, there is a perception, as the lady in my story alluded to, they think loneliness is a problem of older adults. That is totally untrue. This is a survey done by BBC in 2018 on Valentine's Day. They surveyed 55,000 people all across the world. And what did they find? Loneliness is more common among the millennials and Gen Z. So I talked about self-alienation. When you go through self-alienation, you go through a phase of self-preservation mode. Let me give you an example of what is self-alienation. Suppose somebody is going through loneliness and they're in the self-alienation phase in the mental health. They go to a party or a gathering. They feel that nobody wants to talk to me. I'm not interesting. I'm not lovable. So they ostracize. And others feel that she doesn't want to be messed around or talked about. Just stay away from her. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But self-preservation mode also does something very interesting. It makes you socially hyper-vigilant. So you perceive everything as a threat. You have a cognitive bias. Even if somebody wants to come and help you, you feel that there's a hidden agenda, something is going on. So people don't trust. And also you're on the edge. You are more likely to have palpitations, heart racing faster, you don't feel right, you don't sleep well. What are the symptoms they present with? They can present with simple symptoms like, I'm not feeling good, under the weather, lackadaisical, back pain, my peripheral neuropathy is getting worse, my blood pressure is erratic, my sugars are all over the place. Or it could be the sleep pattern will get disturbed. They're eating erratically, so they have gassy stomach, they have abdominal pain. Or they could have problems with the cognition and blood pressure. So when you come to self-preservation mode, your body realizes there's an imminent danger to the individual. It switches off the mind from the body. That's when a lot of problems happen. So look at this slide. On the left side, there is increase in all your stress hormones. So your body is on the fight, fright, and the flight mode. You're always on the edge. All your stress hormones are up, including the glucocorticoids. But look at this side, ladies and gentlemen. There is inflammation that's happening in your blood vessels. So you're more likely to develop clogging of the blood vessels. So what is the end result of all this? This is a meta-analysis of 140 studies. This is evidence-based medicine. The study was done with full scientific vigor, and this study of 300,000 people for 7.5 years, the results were shocking. What do the results show? If you're going through chronic loneliness, it's as good as you're smoking 15 cigarettes per day or enjoying 6 drinks of alcohol every day. You're better off being a sedentary person, eating all the junk food, rather than to develop loneliness. So this is an evidence-based meta-analysis that's published by Hunts and Lundstrom. It does something very much brutal to the memory. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dominic only because of my memory. You wipe away my memory, I don't know who I am. If you have a person who has got a mild cognitive impairment or going through aging process and there's a mild memory issues, you put him into loneliness environment, he goes down like a pack of cards. It's a precipitous fall. And that's devastating. This is what we saw during COVID time. I can't believe, doctor, that my parents are like this. How come I didn't see anything? Just 1 week into the lockdown, they had erratic blood pressures, erratic blood sugars, they were not able to manage, they were disharmony at home. It's because they had a change in the cognition. And this condition has got a high caregiver burnout. Now, the next slide shows the process, how it happens. So when you go through chronic loneliness, there are 3 things that happens. One, there's biological. Your hormones are deranged. You're under fight and flight mode. Then there is changes to your body structure, psychology, where you're very anxious, you're hopeless, more likely that you're on the edge, and you feel there's no meaning and purpose. And then you change in your behavior because you're not sleeping well, you eat erratically, you put on weight, you're physically inactive. Many times people resort to drinking and smoking. Now, it is Chamberlain and colleagues who published this in American Heart Medical Journal. What did they find? People who are going through chronic loneliness, there is a 32% increase incidence of heart disease or heart failure, 26% increase chances of having a stroke, and a 50% decline in cognitive function. Can you believe it? This is scientific evidence. Now, what is the biggest challenge? How do you deal with it? I set out the challenge for you. How do you deal with it? The first thing that we need to do is to change people's attitude. As this lady alluded to me in our meeting, that why are people so insensitive to people who are going through loneliness? People don't want to come and talk that I'm lonely because they feel stigmatized. They're treated with utter disdain and insensitivity. That is just not acceptable. Theresa May, then Prime Minister in 2018, commissioned a report. When she got the report, she was absolutely shocked. She was so shocked she couldn't believe the report. And for the first time in the history of humankind, she appointed a minister only for loneliness. But she was alone though. So we have Minister for Loneliness in Japan, Norway, and other Scandinavian countries. So what are the solutions that we need to do? People who go through loneliness are people who have low self-esteem, low confidence. The first thing is you work with them. You help them to get better. So you need to look inward, not outward. So your biological clock, the alarm system, what I talked about, is going on an overdrive. Reset it. Change your cognitive bias. That means you don't perceive everything as danger. Okay? Then tell them to start doing things that they love and they like going for a walk, watching a movie, cooking food, or painting, or gardening, or whatever they want to do. Tell them to be kind to themselves. Let them get better. And once they're confident, they can step out. Tell them to go very slowly. This is where we make a big mistake. We tell them, we get to the counselor, tell them to confide. Ladies and gentlemen, if somebody is going through chronic loneliness, it's quite daunting to open up and talk about it. You need to build connections over a period of time, and over a period of time, you develop confidence, and then you confide. Third thing, look after yourself. Get your sleep better. get your eating pattern better, make sure that you take your medications and you're following up your diet. Then, ladies and gentlemen, join a group or a club. That will help you. And that will give you a sense of meaning and purpose. That's what I found so very good in people who are going through loneliness. If you're a millennial, Gen Z, make sure you watch the screen time. Facebook-like syndrome, imposter syndrome, is very real in Bangalore, or in Birmingham, or in Bangkok. It is very real. So deal with your screen. Remember what this mother said, how can my son be lonely? He's got so many Instagram friends. If somebody's going through loneliness and not getting better, they could do well with mindfulness. Let me end the story with a wonderful, heartwarming, real-life story. This is Edwin Hardy. Edwin Hardy was a Second World War veteran, a jazz pianist. He lived with his wife for 70 years, and he was doing very well. It so happened that his wife had been taken to hospital, and things unraveled. Just in a week, they were lovely, wonderful couples, symbiotically supporting one another, pottering around the house, walking down to the local corner shop. But things changed. He had to be taken into the care home. And once he went to the care home, he went downhill like many people do. And he had to be given medicines because he was very agitated. There was a young carer who came to look after him. He was part of the local band. He took interest in Edwin Hardy, and he found out that he likes music. So he started talking about music, and they got along well, and they connected well. And he got off the medications, they regularized his food habits, they regularized his sleep, and then Edwin Hardy could join back with his wife because his wife was so violent, he made sure that the wife is far away from him. Then he performed to the group in the care home. And Edwin Hardy wanted to give back something to the community that helped him. So he put out an ad in Somerset newspaper, and he got 81 people who came out, and they performed for the community. Ladies and gentlemen, the most miserable poverty is loneliness and an unloved person. That's a quote from Mother Theresa. It is just not acceptable. Every human heart longs to belong. Personally, for me, it's Imago Dei, image of God. And God is love, ladies and gentlemen. And love is not spelled as L-O-V-E, it is spelled as T-I-M-E. So let us build a community that is caring and loving so that people who are lonely can come out and talk to one another. Thank you very much.